Yeah, well, thanks for doing this. I know as a student, when I was at Aspen, I never had the chance to really, speak with a conductor one on one, other than like, going up scared and saying, "Am I too loud? Am I too soft? What do I do?" And Robert that's definitely him. He yells at people all the time. No, no, Robert's very friendly. And you can ask him anything, and that's one of the great things about him. And so I have a couple questions. I can just get off the bat here. Um, this is one I've been thinking about as well because I'm trying to imagine, my experience at Aspen versus now as faculty. And Robert, what do you think the biggest difference is conducting students versus professionals, quote unquote?
I think the biggest difference is that professionals have a vast experience of their own with the repertoire that we're doing. So if we're doing a Beethoven symphony in Atlanta, say, we've the orchestra's done it every which way ever that could be imagined. So the determining factor is deciding how it's going to be this time. What will this incarnation sound like? And trying to make it a cohesive and unified approach to the piece becomes the conductor's main job. With a student orchestra, it's the opposite. Often the majority of the orchestra is playing something for the first time. So it has to do with introducing the piece as well as honing a quality performance. So for me, that's always the biggest difference is that level of experience, because often the level of talent or musicality is the same.
Yeah. I was thinking, and actually Renee had asked me about this during our lesson. To me, it always seems like the students are almost hungrier to learn because they haven't done it before. So anything you say to them, they'll absorb, whether it clicks right or not. It's always the question, but that always seems to be the case when I'm playing next to these guys in the orchestra. They're trying as hard as they can, and they sound fantastic. But there might be something they're missing just because they haven't done it before. And right now, professionals. But what's the biggest challenge working um, at a festival like Aspen Music Festival versus working with the ASO?
I don't know
Or
if
is
it,
there one?
uh, there's some, Aspen is unique in its wholesale investment with the festival orchestra and the chamber symphony of faculty and students working together, playing together, performing together, and that kind of mentoring. I know that goes on in the world in many ways, in many places, but not in the concentrated and expansive at the same time way that we do it at Aspen, because that's our way of working. The Philharmonic Orchestra is a little different at Aspen because it is entirely fellows and students, but there's still a great deal of faculty involvement. So that's a little different. But the festival orchestra and the chamber symphony are fundamentally built from that model of faculty mentoring and being embedded. Everybody's together in the same effort to perform together. So when I'm conducting one of those two orchestras, I'm also working with all the faculty that's present. And so it's a beautiful thing. I love it, but it also means I'm not. I have to give space for everybody to do their work with their students and not do all the input myself. It's a little different with the Philharmonic Orchestra. It's more like conducting the Juilliard Orchestra or the Curtis Orchestra or the Oberlin Orchestra, where I'm pretty much the faculty in the room in any given rehearsal. But at Aspen, it's totally different. And so the thrill and the joy, but I guess that is a challenge too, although I don't feel challenged by it anymore. I feel rewarded by it, is giving the space for the faculty to do their work. And so there's a greater collective faculty effort in the immediacy of a rehearsal that's actually tremendously beneficial, and it makes things work much more quickly than you can work with an all-student orchestra, just because of all that uh, input that's being given to the students at one time.
Oh, I think that's great, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, when I was as a student playing in festival and chamber, I sat next to my teachers, and I don't ever remember, the conductor was saying, second or third trumpet. They address the faculty and be like, hey, they'd give it a broad broad idea of what they wanted, and then we would be internally managed. And I think that's great, and I think that would be a challenge, to not just try to lay it down like you normally would. You give what you need, and then you just kind of have to wait a little bit and let it digest, and then it'll work right.
Yeah, I've noticed I have to give room, even time-wise, for things to happen and not get in the way. And also,
I've noticed that. Yeah,
thing is, a nod and a wink with certain faculty members, and then I know everything's taken care of. I don't have to take care of it.
It's a very different environment, but I think it's a great one. Just practical experience, and fantastic instructors as well.
I remember I had a flute teacher who always played with me, not always, but most of the time. And there was something I was trying to play as he played. There was something about that modeling and mimicking that was a very powerful educational tool for me as a young student. That was really, I don't think you can do that all the time in every setting, but to do that and in a way that's similar to what's happening at Aspen is really a quick kind of teaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so my question was quite similar, but it's for the Atlanta Symphony season. Who comes up with the program, for the following season, and how do you go about that?
Well, I was just going to say that generally programming is done in a symphony orchestra like the Atlanta Symphony with the music director and the artistic administrator primarily. We developed a different way of working right away when I came here, and we have contractually, the buck still stops here. So I end up having stamp of approval or veto over anything, but we actually do it with quite a big committee. So I'm getting input from members of the orchestra, members of the chorus, members of the board, and then also our education director, our marketing director, our development director, our personnel manager, our librarian, and our artistic administrator, of course, and executive director. And we convene as a big committee to go over programming plans and look at them from all those sides. And the thing that we found has been very useful in that is that once we have the final program, everybody knows what it's about, why we got there, and what we're trying to accomplish with it. What I've noticed happens in many other orchestras is that if the programming is done without input from, say, the marketing director, then the marketing director has to figure out, why are we selling this and how would I sell it? Whereas if everybody's in those discussions from the beginning, everybody understands what should be accomplished and why we're programming and doing what we chose to do. And I love that. It's just a fantastic way of working. And it means you're evaluating from multiple perspectives, which is also important, because when you're programming for an institution that's serving as broad and diverse a public as we do, it's not enough just to say, well, this is really good stuff, so we want to do it. It's also important to address different interests, passions, and needs, because we don't have an audience. We have multiple audiences. And different people want different things, and we want to address all of that. And then also there's just internal values and things that we have to uphold, like the health of the orchestra and the health of the chorus, and making sure we're taking care of a tradition of great music, which is sort of the museum aspect of what we do, and at the same time taking care of what's happening, what's new, what's marginalized that we should be paying attention to. And that's sort of the gallery aspect of what we do. That's an ever-changing exhibit. And it's a big, complex puzzle. And it's very satisfying in the end if you feel that, and we often do get to this kind of, aha, we have it, we can look at this and feel that all those needs have been addressed and met.
Yeah, they haven't done it before. And Renee had asked me, in auditions, a lot of the pieces we haven't played. And I'm finally getting to the point now that I have kind of played everything, or almost everything. But, even auditioning for the Atlanta Symphony when I got the job, I had played maybe 4 of the things on there, 5, I don't know, not very many at all. And the best thing I told her was fake it. Pretend like you know what you're doing. You listen to recordings, look at the score, and know who's playing around you. Because it's not about you actually playing the piece. It's about you knowing what's supposed to be happening and making the people sound comfortable around you.
Yeah, I would just echo that the best thing you can do in terms of auditioning when you haven't had the opportunity to play a piece is exactly what you just described. It's familiarizing yourself as much as possible with the totality of the piece so that you know how you fit in and how the music goes. Because somehow on committees, and I'm sure you've felt this too, Stuart, you're listening to somebody and you can hear whether they know the piece or not. If they play something accurately or even perfectly, but they don't understand where they fit into the larger piece, somehow we hear it as listeners, even though they're playing alone. You can just tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually kind of segues pretty perfectly into a question that I had for you, Robert, but also the students had for me and for you. So that kind of works out well. We've sat on auditions, I don't know how many I've been on now, 10 maybe. And I know that's not a lot compared to what you've been on, because I've only been in the orchestra 6-7 years now, whatever it is. But one of the things, I know what I think I know what I'm looking for and listening for, but I'm always curious what you listen for, because you usually come in during the final round as music director, and different orchestras do that differently. Some stay the whole time, but that seems unnecessary because there's so many candidates to get through. But what do you listen for?
I try to listen in a strange way. This is not a very helpful answer, but I'll try and make it one, because my first response is talent. I try to listen for talent, and I guess what that means in terms of advice for you in taking auditions is try and let your talent shine through. If somebody plays scared, so to speak, afraid to make a mistake, trying to be picture perfect, we don't get to hear their talent. If somebody doesn't make a musical choice, we don't get to hear their talent. If someone is too nervous or too uncomfortable, their talent doesn't come through. And so part of learning to audition is not just learning the music, but kind of studying yourself. What do you need? And everybody's different. What do you need to be at your best? What do you need to be most comfortable? I was always terrible at auditions when I had to take auditions. And the one time I did a really good audition was when I thought I didn't stand a chance. And somehow that liberated my nerves and my fear so that I wasn't standing in my own way. And so you have
because
to
you weren't,
find...
because you hadn't psyched yourself out. Like, it wasn't the most important thing. It was like, all right, it's a long shot, just whatever.
Yeah. And I'll just do the best I can. And if you can get to that attitude of, I'm just going to do the best I can and really do your best, because what's so frustrating in an audition is when you don't know, when you know you weren't able to do your best. And so you kind of have to study yourself as much as the music. Do I need a nap? Do I need to not take a nap? Do I drink any coffee? Do I not drink any coffee? Do I take time to be alone? Do I need to talk to somebody else? You're going to have to find your own solutions to finding your comfort level so that you can do your best. And what we as listeners respond to is when somebody's doing their best. We hear it.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think it's, a lot of the things I think about as well. And I think about it a different word. I say, like finding your voice. And I think that's because of one of my teachers used that and it kind of clicked with my head. But it's that same thing. It's finding your personality, finding your style, and not trying to play, here's the way the orchestra plays and it's the only way. No, it's you put down what is you. And if they want something different, they'll ask you.
That's
now,
right.
Robert, you remember from my audition, I did not play perfectly at all, especially the final round. I think it was Bartok Concerto for Orchestra. I don't know what happened, but it did not go very well. And I did it a couple times, and it kind of got worse, and then it got better. And I think it was sort of, maybe everybody's like, all right, definitely getting tired at this point, but I guess there was something there that they wanted to hear more of and they liked. So, for auditions, and I tell students this all the time, especially for trumpet players, brass players, because our instruments are so unforgiving and there's so much stuff that we can't control because I don't actually know what my tongue's doing when I'm doing things. I think I do, and I visualize it a certain way, but we don't know what's happening. So we don't need perfection. You just want to sound good. You have to play sort of within a box, right? Your normal styles of what's accepted. You can't play Petrushka at a quarter note equals 144, something like that. It'd be impressive, but it'd be wrong. And just the other side, you can't go too slow, but you want to have your voice in that. And some of that is just experience listening to different recordings and thinking, oh, I really like that thing, and then latching onto that and just trying to, to bring that forth.
I think that's a great point too, that if you can get friends of yours to listen to you, at least it's another level of stress. And in a sense, you have to put the stress on yourself to get the experience of putting yourself out there, so to speak, and allowing someone else to hear what you're doing, which creates another level of discomfort that's important to learn to live with. Because, I mean, you already know as a performer, you're never completely comfortable. It's just never going to happen because it's a risky business. You're always going to be the possibility of not doing your best is always going to be there, and you're always going to be unable to fix what just happened. You play a note and that's it. It's out there. And so that inherently creates this challenge. And so the emotional, psychological level of how you address that and live with it and learn to use it to your advantage, because in a sense it can give you heightened awareness, sensitivity, and performance ability if you can harness it.
Yeah, no, that sounds absolutely right. And I think a lot of times we go into auditions, I mean, scared and nervous because it is, you get 5-6 minutes, whatever, to give it one shot, and hopefully you do well. And if you don't, it psychs you up. So it's hard to get, rid of that. But I think what most people don't expect is on the other side of the screen, the committee wants you to sound good. We want to have a hard time getting through all the candidates because we're like, oh, there's just so many that we want to advance. And, a lot of times just little things happen that trigger a bigger thing and another thing. So it can be easier to say yes or no to this person, or like, I really wanted this person to go through, but they did some things that just automatically would have to, get rid of them. So don't be afraid when an audition. We want to hear you, and we want to hear you sound great. Now, I think that's easier said than done.
I'm really glad you brought that up too, because I think it's easy to think of the committee that you're playing for as somehow the enemy. When in fact, I've had so many committees now in my 20 years in Atlanta. I've never seen a committee that didn't have compassion for the person auditioning, because everyone's been through it. And so there's actually tremendous support that is almost impossible to feel, because they're your judges. And it's worth mentioning that even though you might feel that people are really rooting for you in this kind of universal way, because everybody's been through it.
So this question for you, how old were you when you took your first audition, and what was your mindset? Okay, I'm going to take this for experience, or I'm going to take this to win it. Because I had that kind of dilemma when I was thinking about taking the Florida Orchestra audition, just to see if I could even try and see what that feels like. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think if you go in thinking I'm going to take this as practice, maybe it'll take some of the stress off of it, but it might also take some of the preparation stress off of it. So maybe you're not working as hard towards it, as in, because you're like, oh, it'll be fine. Like, I'm just going to take it just to feel okay. And if I do, great, whatever. But I'm not going to spend as much time like learning the parts, learning what happens around the parts. So I would say go in it like you want to win it. Because I think most people, you're going to take an audition, you want to win it. Maybe it's not exactly where you want to end up. If you wanted to end up in Chicago Symphony or something, and you're taking the Florida audition, it doesn't really matter. It's still an audition. It's still an audition for a great orchestra. So you need to go in wanting to do it, but not so much that you psych yourself up saying like, this is the only audition I can ever take, and it's either going to go well or it's going to go poorly. Yeah, so I think you're going in thinking like you want to win it.
Okay.
And my first audition, I believe it was Lyric Opera Chicago. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember now, but I think that's what it was. And I went in and I felt okay about it. It was I actually had a lot of fun preparing the material because it was all opera stuff, which is it's so different than the the mainstay orchestral route. And I think I got a lot better because of it, because things were just uncomfortable, and doing some Berg and some Strauss operas, which are just nuts. Wozzeck, Salome, things like that, which, it does help your playing ability and just knowing something different. But I went in, wanting to do that, and I thought I did pretty well. I didn't get past the first round, but I felt good about what I did, and I learned from it.
Sweet.
Robert, I don't know exactly how things are for conductors when you audition outside of like the assistant conductor auditions we've done. Do you have a similar mindset about that?
Yeah, the one thing I'd want to echo most in what you said is play to win. I mean, if why play unless you're going to win? I mean, There's the phrase, you can't win if you don't play. But play to win. And then it's okay to lose. It's not a big deal. But definitely play to win. And I think one of the things Stuart said that I'd also want to reinforce is you want to work your hardest and your best for everything you do. And to work to win, I think encourages you psychologically to do that work to the best of your ability and not to slack off or take any shortcuts. The worst audition I ever took was as a pianist. I was auditioning for a program to be a opera coach. And I thought I had the job. And my audition was absolutely awful. And I did not get the job. So there's something too about not predicting the future, not having too much confidence, and really doing your best. And there's something in us, we always know if we're doing our best. And so you just kind of have to ask yourself always, am I doing my best?
Robert, what you were talking about, practicing, you're thinking about what you're doing, and then performing, you just do it. And then, so I think for auditions, if you can get to that, you just do it. And then after, you can do the practice style, think about what you did. And, every audition, you're going to learn something from, either good or bad, that you did. You're like, oh, I'm actually stronger on this than I thought, or I thought I was doing this great. But also just be honest with yourself, not in the moment, because then you're going to get in your head and then it's just going to go downhill. But be honest with yourself afterwards. A lot of teachers say, record your audition, because you might think you did amazing. And then you listen back, you're like, oh, okay, I could see how that could be seen or heard very differently. And I've had people email me after trumpet auditions in Atlanta, kind of angry, saying, why did you cut me after this one round? And I'll be like, here's exactly why. I'm like, did you record yourself? And they'd say, no. I'm like, well, these are my notes. You need your own notes. So, if when you get done with an audition, you could also, like record yourself speaking, like just your thoughts, or write it down so you have some record of it and go back later, because it'll be fresh then. And then you can try to digest it and work your way through it.
How do you draw on past audition experiences in preparation for your next one? I've taken several military band auditions now, and I've got one coming up in early September. So I'm trying right now to kind of gather my thoughts. How would you recommend doing that?
I mean, I've never been the most organized player. Like, you think of people like Tom Hooten, who's like, he has everything laid out and he knows exactly what he's going to be doing, and like far down the line. I think I've been a less cerebral player. I just kind of do things and then they either work or they don't. But now I've been a lot better about like taking notes about how I'm doing things, how I've improved on things, how things don't work. So I think taking notes is actually a great thing. And I have, actually my iPad's resting against my case, but I have a notebook in there that people will see me write in after concerts or rehearsals or whatever, because I'm trying to, I'll think of something, I'm like, oh crap, that's why that doesn't work, or that's why it does work. And I want to write that down and try to get organized about it. So if you can be more organized about it, write down, if you get that done with an audition, you think, oh, like I had too much coffee this morning, or I I walked up the stairs too fast right before I went on stage and couldn't get my heart rate down. Those are things you can learn from.
Yeah.
Now, not every audition is going to have the same amount of stairs, but you can have an idea of like, okay, this is how I get my heart rate down, or I need to work on getting the heart rate down, figuring out how to breathe in an effective way that does let your body get to where it wants to be. I don't know if that exactly answers it, but I think that's the best thing I could think of is just get organized about your playing and about yourself.
Okay. Thank you.
It's interesting because I feel that in my experience, the times, I haven't done it consistently throughout my life, but the times where I've kept careful notes about my work, practicing, studying, preparing, I've gotten so much out of it. There's something about a record that just helps you keep track of everything, because we forget things and then we remember them when it's too late. If you keep a notebook, you go, oh, I learned from that audition. I didn't know this excerpt as well as I wanted. How many minutes did I spend on it today? And if you keep, I remember at one period, I was keeping track of how much time I spent on what initiative. So a lot of it has to, and a lot of the only way to evaluate your own work is if you know what the aim is. Otherwise, there's no way to evaluate it. So what's the goal? What's the aim? What's the record say? And how can I learn from the record to better serve the aim? I think is the game.
That makes sense.
That's great.
And if you kept a notebook or a journal around your work, your practice, your preparation, you learn something from it that even then when you stop taking notes all the time, that way of viewing your own work, I think, sticks. And then if you come back to doing it again, you learn something else, and I think it sticks.
I agree.
Yeah.
I take notes when I practice, and I log every like time interval and how long I do things. And I'm looking back from like just this September. I'm like, yeah, I've gotten a lot better, and my endurance, has gotten stronger from doing this, such and such. But yeah, almost running out of space. So I need to get another one. But yeah, it's good stuff.
That's great. I did that. I did a similar thing once too, where I kept a record of my progress, because so often we don't feel our progress until later, right? And you have, and if you observe that over time, then you become more confident that even though you don't feel like you're getting better, you'll be better in 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
Maestro Spano, I really felt what you were saying about the kind of contradictory idea that sometimes when you are not expecting to do well, you actually do better, or rather when you're not really invested in doing well, you actually do better because you just kind of free yourself up emotionally, I guess. And that's definitely happened to me before. So this is a question for both of you. How would you recommend in your preparations for any kind of high pressure performance or audition, which really does have real consequences, or you have reason to be invested in it, how do you balance that mental game in the ideal way where you are prepared, but you're not overly invested to the point of paralysis? It's delicate, but I'm curious about what you guys do.
Do you want me to start that one, Stuart, or do you want to take it?
I'll take it, and then I'll let you piggyback if that's okay. So actually, I wanted to back up to my Atlanta audition. I gotten a call like a few days before the audition that, I don't know if it was Fort Worth or somewhere in Texas, they needed a principal trumpet for Mahler 3, I think it was, last minute. And they'd find me that, but it would conflict with the audition. And I talked to some old teachers, and one of them from way back in my high school days was like, "You're never going to get that job. Go play Mahler. It's going to be a lot better for you." And luckily I had enough people say, or enough people and also my own head thinking, yeah, it'd be awesome to play Mahler, but it'd be more awesome to get a job, and then I could still play Mahler. And I'm really glad I ignored that advice, because it ended up working well. Did I expect to get a principal job? Not at all. But, when you go into these auditions, yeah, you want to get the job because you want to have stability. You want to be able to play music every day without the fear of, oh no, the rent check is due. What am I going to do? I need to find some other gigs. I need to find some students. and that gets scary. And I think some of it's finding out, like kind of what Robert was saying, figure out how your brain works or what you need to do to distract yourself. If you need to, like a lot of times I'll play video games or listen to music that's not classical music just to get my head out of it. And just to, so I'm not thinking about it all the time. Even now, we have, we'll have some big pieces coming up and it'll be in the back of my mind, kind of always nagging at me. But you just want to figure out how to separate that. And some of that's, you work as hard as you can on it at that point, and then when you're done, you're done. Mm-hmm. But as far as, getting ready for auditions to make it less stressful or less of a one shot and then you're over and then your life is done, playing for a lot of people and then playing in a way that's uncomfortable, do a mock audition for people, not just trumpet players, other instruments as well, or anybody who makes you nervous or people who make you comfortable, and see, what that feels like. Because some of it will be, you need the experience of having your heart racing a little bit and feeling nervous. Do an audition, a mock audition cold, or do a mock audition, leave the room, do 50 jumping jacks or run up and down the hallway a few times, get that heart rate up. And it's not gonna be the same, but it's a sort of simulated feeling. And then see what you can do to get it down to where you need to be able to play okay. Maybe not perfectly or not comfortably, but okay, where you're like, all right, I'm in control more or less. These are the normal nerve feelings. So a little bit adversity training on that. My old teacher, Barbara Butler, made me do that, which is always, people would be walking by as I'm doing jumping jacks or running down the hallway, but it's kind of like, hey, it works. Mm-hmm. So just putting yourself in that position. And when you get in there, if you're prepared for it, things can always go wrong, but if you're prepared for it and comfortable with how you sound and how you're putting your product forth, that's about all as you can do. The committee may want you to do things differently, but if you say, here's my pictures at an exhibition, and that's as good as I'm going to do it basically, or as close to, and there's something they don't like about it, but they're convinced by it, that's all you need to do basically to get through the first round. Which I know is simplistic. Yeah, just play it like you want to play it and play it well. No, you don't have to do it perfectly. You can chip that last A flat. It doesn't matter. You can chip it really badly and it still doesn't matter as long as you sound good on everything else and have your voice coming through. I don't know if that exactly answered it, but I'll pass it over to Robert now.
Well, I love what you said about simulating the physical experience, because the two thoughts I had in response to your question, the first one is the colloquial thing about being in your own way. The phrase we often use is you're in your head. You're stuck in your head. And the thing about music is it doesn't come from the intellect alone. For you to play well, you have to engage your multiple intelligences, your emotional intelligence, your physical intelligence. It all has to be working harmoniously to produce the best musical result. And the colloquial phrase is actually very helpful to point out what's wrong, because usually when we're in our own way, we're in our heads or we're psyching ourselves out. That's another phrase we hear. And they're actually kind of helpful to realize what's going on. And one of the best cures for that is to get back in your body. Because what happens when we get in our heads is we lose our connection to our physical intelligence. So it can often help just to observe your breathing, or take deeper breaths, or just be aware of your breathing, or be aware of your feet on the floor. Feel the soles of your feet. Feel the center of your body, your solar plexus, the Japanese call hara, that real, your gut. Get in touch with your gut, so to speak, or feel your feet. Or if you're seated, feel the way you're seated on the chair, feel your butt. Anything that, and breathing is also a very helpful one. So anything that gets you back in touch with your physical reality in the room helps to get you out of your head, so to speak. And the other thing is that there's a big shift when you go from practicing to performing. And maybe it's helpful to look at it that when you're practicing or rehearsing, you're remembering what was wrong, how am I going to fix it, I got to go back to that, I had trouble there. It's all about remembering. Performing is all about forgetting. Whatever happened because that'll get you back in your head. If you're trying to perform and you're still in practice mode, you're going to be thinking about what you did. And when you're performing, that's a very dangerous thing. You always got to be thinking about what's coming and what am I doing? And the past is the past. Let it go, let it go, let it go. And so sometimes that's part of why it's a hard shift from the kind of work we do practicing to having to deliver in a performance or an audition.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Thank you, guys.
That's a great, some of the things, Robert, you were talking about, breathing and finding, getting centered and, finding your physical body. That makes a lot of sense. And I think we do that when we're most comfortable, we do that subconsciously, but it's when we're in a stressful mode where we don't do that. And I'll have to do that. Actually, I'll do that during concerts because there's licks that come up that I'm either unsure about or not confident about, or I think they might go okay, or maybe my lip is a little more tired, and I'll have to just think like, okay, release my shoulders or my hips or something. Even though if I'm sitting down, you can still clench them plenty. Just try to get to that physical center again to get to get out of your head.
I had to give an address for Juilliard Pre-College for their commencement this year, so I did it.
Oh, yes.
And I decided to include this quotation from Calvin Coolidge because someone had asked me, what advice would you give an aspiring musician? So I just kind of answered that question in the context of trying to make some remarks to the Juilliard Pre-College commencement. And Calvin Coolidge said, I won't get it exactly right now because I'm not looking at the quotation, but the gist of it is, nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Education will not. The streets are full of educated derelicts. Talent will not. Undeveloped talent is legion. Genius will not. Unrecognized genius is almost a proverb. Persistence alone is omnipotent. And there's something so great about that stick-to-itiveness is bigger than...
I love that.